Will you marry me?
No one inside Buckingham Palace ever imagined the truth would come from a man who spent most of his life standing silently in the shadows. Yet when a set of the late Queen's jewels mysteriously vanished, pieces she treasured, pieces tied to the most private moments of her reign, it wasn't a senior official, a historian, or a royal insider who uncovered the trail. It was a single royal guard, a man in a red coat trained to never speak, suddenly holding a secret that could shake the palace to its core. Before we dive in, if you enjoy emotional royal mysteries, real-life palace intrigue, stories where unexpected heroes rise from the background, go ahead and hit like. Subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. And share this with someone who loves the royal family as much as you do. Alright, let's step inside the palace hallways together. The palace moved differently in the days after the late Queen's passing. The corridors felt heavier, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath, waiting for someone to tell them what to do next. Footsteps echoed a little softer. Voices dropped to whispers. Even the grand clocks seemed to tick with a strange respect, their chimes gentler than usual. And standing among all this quiet mourning was Royal Guard Thomas Ellery, a man known for his stillness, his discipline, and his uncanny ability to notice what others breezed past. Some joked he had the hearing of a fox and the eyes of a hawk. But Thomas didn't think of himself that way. He simply believed that when you guard a family knot, a building, a family, you pay attention. Especially now, because people outside saw the royal guard as symbolic, ceremonial. But Thomas knew otherwise. He'd witnessed the pressure, the fragility, the fear that came with losing a monarch. Inside the palace, life didn't pause. It shook. And that was why he noticed the shift before anyone else. A moment to quiet had happened 3 days after the Queen's death. Thomas was stationed at the private East Corridor, a place rarely walked by tourists or cameras. Only senior staff and the immediate family passed through. But today, it was empty, completely empty. That alone wasn't strange. What chilled him was the silence. Not the respectful quiet of mourning. Different kind. The kind of silence that follows a door being opened at the wrong time. His instincts sharpened. His fingers stiffened on the ceremonial rifle. His eyes moved, barely just enough to catch the flicker of something out of place. A gap. A door slightly ajar in the Queen's private collection room. That room was never left unlocked, certainly not left open. Thomas told himself not to jump to conclusions. Rooms shifted. Staff moved. Life continued. Still, something felt off. The air from the room was colder, as if someone had disturbed it only moments ago. He waited until his shift rotated, then stepped forward. Guards weren't meant to deviate. They weren't meant to investigate. But his feet moved anyway, quiet, precise, like he'd trained for this moment without knowing why. When he entered, the light from the hallway spilled across polished wood cabinets and glass cases. Everything was neat, preserved, untouched, except for one detail. A velvet display tray was empty, not misplaced, not removed for cleaning, empty. And the outline in the dust-free fabric was unmistakable. A necklace had been lifted from its setting. It's not just any necklace. One of the Queen's most cherished pieces, announced undocumented, understood only by a handful of people. Thomas didn't speak. He didn't call out. He didn't move anything. But his heartbeat thudded once, hard, like a hammer dropped beside him. Someone had taken it. But why? And why now? The whispers begin. Thomas reported the open door, following protocol, without mentioning the empty tray. He needed to observe first, to confirm, to understand. If he accused too soon, if he was wrong, he would lose everything. His position, his reputation, the trust he'd spent years earning. But soon, rumors began swirling behind closed doors. Something's gone missing, not officially missing, but unaccounted for. Her Majesty would never have allowed this. People tried to keep their voices low, but grief makes even whispers sharp. Thomas heard fragments everywhere he stood by. Staircases, near the kitchens, inside guard rotation rooms, and every rumor led to the same unsettling truth. The Queen's necklace had disappeared days after her passing. Some blamed inexperienced staff, others whispered about opportunists. One or two insinuated something darker, but Thomas felt something different. A tug in his chest, a strange sense of responsibility. Because while everyone else leaned into panic or suspicion, he remembered something no one else seemed to. The queen had worn that necklace on only 3 occasions.
Once privately, once during a quiet family event, and once the day she met him for the first time. Thomas didn't talk about that moment, didn't even keep a photo of it, but he never forgot how she had thanked him, simply for standing guard during a storm that had rattled the palace windows. "You hold your ground well," she had said. "You remind me of my father's guards." He had bowed, flustered, barely able to speak. Now, the necklace she wore that day was gone, and for reasons he couldn't fully explain, he felt connected to its disappearance, as though the loss of the queen had passed a strange duty onto him. Small clues, sharp edges. The next day, Thomas observed more intentionally, not in a paranoid way, in a trained, focused way. What he found were small things, tiny shifts in the palace's rhythm. A door that normally creaked, suddenly silent. A staff member taking a route they had never walked before. A senior advisor avoiding the east corridor entirely. A set of muddy prints near a service entrance, hours after the grounds had been cleared. No single clue meant much, but together, they painted a picture that someone was moving with a purpose. Someone who wanted to avoid being noticed. Thomas followed the prints back to a side passage used mostly by maintenance and night patrol guards. It smelled faintly of cleaning chemicals and cold stone. He walked slowly, listening, and then he heard it, a soft clink, metal touching metal, footsteps shifting with a cautious weight. He held his breath. A shadow slid across the far wall. Someone carrying something long and thin, wrapped in cloth. Too small to be a weapon, too long to be casual. Thomas didn't chase. Royal guards weren't supposed to run after shadows in restricted areas. Instead, he memorized the gait, the height, the speed of silhouette. He watched the way they favored their right leg, the subtle limp. This wasn't staff. This wasn't a family member. This was someone with training, which meant someone with access. The realization crawled cold up his spine. The moment everything shifted. Later that evening, while the palace lights dimmed and the halls quieted into their nightly hum, Thomas was posted by the grand staircase. It was a peaceful assignment, symbolic, respectful, and beautifully lit by soft chandeliers. He stood perfectly still, but inside his thoughts collected like storm clouds. If someone stole the queen's necklace, what else might they be after? Why steal something sentimental rather than something priceless? And why now, when emotions were raw and security was stretched? But then, just past midnight, he saw something that cleared every question from his mind. A person in staff uniform moved quickly across the opposite corridor. Too quickly. Their shoulders were tense, their pace sharp, their hands tucked into their sleeves as if hiding something. Thomas recognized the limp immediately. His chest tightened. The shadow from earlier wasn't a trick of the light. It was this person. Someone working inside Buckingham Palace. Someone walking straight toward the one place no one was allowed to enter at this hour. The late Queen's sealed private quarters. Thomas's pulse didn't race. His training held it steady. But every instinct he had sharpened to a blade. Something was happening. Something serious. Something that had begun with a missing necklace, but clearly wasn't ending there. And for the first time in his career, Thomas took a quiet step forward, breaking the stillness he had sworn to maintain. Because whatever was happening, he wasn't just a guard anymore. He was the only one who had seen the signs, the only one who could follow them, the only one who realized. The mystery was just beginning. Yes, third full night inside Buckingham Palace is not truly night. Light slips under doors, chandeliers hum softly, and distant guards shift their weight in rhythmic patterns that echo through marble floors. Yet on this particular night, everything felt sharper, quieter, like the building itself was holding a secret. Thomas Ellery moved with a calm exterior, every step measured, every breath controlled, but inside his mind ran with one steady thought. The staff member he had seen, moving too quickly, too quietly, too deliberately, was now headed toward the late Queen's sealed private quarters, a forbidden zone. No cleaning staff, no aides, no attendants were allowed past midnight. Only 2 types of people entered that corridor at such an hour. senior investigators, or someone who didn't want to be seen. Thomas already knew which category this person fell into. He advanced down the corridor, his polished boots touching the floor with a practiced stillness learned from years of standing in ceremonial silence. His posture remained upright, calm, even formal, so that if anyone saw him, they would assume he was simply repositioning. But his eyes stayed locked on that shadowed figure ahead. As Thomas reached a bend in the hallway, he slowed. The marble floor made it impossible to run without noise, and noise would alert the intruder. Instead, he studied the environment. The long corridor with portraits of monarchs on both sides, the faint scent of lavender polish still lingering from the evening cleaning, the sound of faint footsteps ahead. He recognized that sound instantly. A drag step, soft, muted, but distinct. The limp. Thomas followed, maintaining just enough distance to avoid detection. The corridor opened into a smaller, more intimate hallway reserved for private royal usage. Bedrooms, dressing rooms, and a quiet sitting area the Queen favored on sleepless nights. Most staff never stepped foot here. He noticed something new now. The intruder had slowed too, almost as if listening. Thomas froze. A single breath louder than necessary could give him away. The silence stretched, tense and thin. Then the footsteps resumed, faster this time, directed toward the Queen's private quarters. Thomas followed. The Queen's private door stood at the end of a narrow hallway. Tall, white, framed by gold trim, ordinarily sealed with a special lock operated only by senior staff. Tonight, that door wasn't fully shut. It was slightly open, so subtle the average person would miss it, but not Thomas. His muscles tensed. His instincts kicked in. Thomas approached slowly, carefully, keeping his shadow aligned with the wall. When he reached the door, he peered inside through the smallest gap. His training kept him silent, but his heartbeat thudded once, hard, when he saw what the stranger was doing. The intruder wasn't rifling through drawers. He wasn't searching for valuables. He was kneeling before the Queen's writing desk, hands trembling, head bowed, as if an apology. In the glow of a small pocket flashlight, Thomas finally saw the man's face. It was Harold Northwell, a longtime palace staff member. Quiet, efficient, reliable, the kind of person who had blended into the background so consistently that most people forgot he existed. But Thomas didn't forget faces, or footsteps, or limps. Harold's hands shook as he lifted a small wooden box from the drawer, an antique case the Queen had always kept locked. Thomas felt the temperature in the room drop a degree. The missing necklace. Was it in there? Or was Harold after something else? A whisper in the dark. Thomas knew he needed proof. He couldn't confront Harold without reason. Royal guards weren't detectives. They protected by presence, not pursuit. But he couldn't stand still anymore. A floorboard creaked under his boot. So soft most would dismiss it, but Harold's head shot up instantly. Their eyes locked. For a moment, neither moved. Then Harold spoke, not in panic, not in anger, but in a voice trembling with something deeper. "Please, don't call anyone." Thomas didn't answer. Harold held the wooden box to his chest. "You don't understand," he whispered. "I'm not stealing. I'm trying to fix something." Thomas stepped closer, not aggressive, not intimidating, just steady. That steadiness often made people speak, without realizing they were confessing. Harold swallowed hard. "She trusted me," he said, "more than she trusted some of her advisors. And I failed her." Thomas felt the words hit heavier than expected. "What did you fail?" Thomas asked quietly, breaking protocol, but something told him silence would only make this worse. Harold set the box gently on the desk, as if placing a fragile memory rather than an object. "The necklace," he said. "It shouldn't have gone missing. It wasn't meant to. I thought, after her passing, that I could put things back where they belonged before anyone noticed. But it's too late now." Thomas's breath caught. Harold wasn't denying he'd touched the necklace, but he wasn't confessing theft either. Thomas kept his voice even. "Where is it now?" Harold shook his head slowly. "I don't know." It wasn't the answer Thomas expected, and the sadness in Harold's eyes made him believe it. The Queen's hidden list. Harold opened the wooden box with trembling fingers. Inside lay a folded envelope, sealed with the Queen's personal crest. Untouched, unopened, perfectly preserved. Thomas recognized it instantly. That seal was only used for personal matters, the kind the Queen never wanted assistance or pressed to handle. Harold whispered, "She left this for me. I wasn't meant to open it until she gave permission." His voice weakened. She never got the chance. Thomas felt the atmosphere inside the room change, as if the late Queen's presence lingered around them. The faint scent of her favorite perfume still clung to the curtains. Harold held the envelope carefully, not like a thief, like a man carrying a message he was afraid to read. "I think the list inside tells the truth about the jewels," Harold said. "Not just the necklace. All of them." A chill ran through Thomas's veins. The Queen had made a list, a private one, for a secret only she and Harold shared. Harold looked at Thomas with eyes full of guilt and plea. "She trusted me to protect her personal collection, but the moment she passed, everything changed. People started asking questions, looking through things, moving things." Thomas leaned closer. "And the necklace?" he asked. Harold's answer broke the tension like glass. "It was taken before she died." A revelation that changed everything. Thomas felt his breath pause. Before she died. Not after. Not during the chaos of mourning. This wasn't opportunistic theft. It wasn't someone exploiting the Queen's passing. This was planned, deliberate, possibly connected to the Queen herself. Harold wiped his eyes. "She told me, months ago, that someone was trying to access her private collection. Someone she didn't trust. I thought she was just being cautious. But she asked me to keep watch." Thomas felt the weight of the moment land heavily on his shoulders. He wasn't following a simple thief. He was following a trail the Queen herself had predicted. Harold opened the envelope with shaking hand. Inside was a handwritten letter, sharp, elegant strokes in the Queen's unmistakable handwriting. He passed it to Thomas. "If you are reading this, something has begun that cannot be ignored." His skin prickled. Harold whispered, "There's more. Turn the page." Thomas did, and the second line reshaped everything. "The necklace is not missing. It was hidden, for a reason only one person can uncover." Thomas felt the breath leave his lungs. The Queen wasn't warning of a thief. She was giving a mission. To whom? Not Harold, not the advisors, not the senior staff. The bottom of the page answered it. "This duty falls to the one who notices what others overlook." Thomas froze. The meaning hit him like a silent thunderbolt. The Queen had written this for him? Before he could process it, Harold grabbed the desk edge with panic. "Someone's coming," he whispered. "Footsteps, heavy ones." Thomas heard them too. A group, moving quickly, heading straight for the room. This wasn't coincidence. Someone knew Harold had come here. Someone knew Thomas was inside too. The corridor lights flickered. Harold's eyes widened. "Thomas, whatever happens next, don't let them take that letter." Thomas folded the Queen's note and tucked it into his uniform. The footsteps grew louder, closer, urgent. And then, just as the doorknob began to turn, Thomas realized. Chapter 1 wasn't the beginning. This was... The doorknob twisted. Thomas didn't breathe. Harold didn't blink. The Queen's sealed letter, now tucked inside Thomas's uniform, felt like a burning ember against his chest. The footsteps outside stopped. Silence. Then a voice, low, authoritative, murmured something Thomas couldn't make out. More than one person stood on the other side. 3, maybe 4. Their shadows pressed against the gap beneath the door, like a dark tide waiting to break inside. Harold leaned close and whispered, "If they find us in here, they won't ask questions. They'll act." Thomas didn't doubt it. He'd seen what happened to staff who crossed the wrong boundaries. You weren't fired. You disappeared into a quiet transfer or early retirement, or simply didn't return to your post the next day. The doorknob twitched again. Harold panicked. "Follow me." He hurried across the Queen's private suite toward a section of wall that looked ordinary. Cream wallpaper, delicate gold trim. Nothing unusual. But Harold pressed his hand flat against one panel and whispered something under his breath. A soft click. A hidden seam revealed itself. Thomas's eyes widened. A concealed passage. "Go!" Harold urged. Quickly, Thomas slipped inside just as the doorknob began to turn fully. Harold followed and pulled the panel shut behind them. Darkness swallowed them whole. A second later, the Queen's door burst open. Heavy boots, multiple voices. Someone saying, "Search everything." But Thomas and Harold were already gone, swallowed by the passage the Queen had kept secret. Inside the hidden passage, the darkness wasn't total. Thin slivers of moonlight bled through microscopic gaps in the old stonework, enough for Thomas to make out narrow steps beneath his feet. Harold whispered, "Hold on to the wall." They climbed downward, the air growing cooler. Dust clung to the corners, undisturbed for years, maybe longer. Thomas realized instantly this wasn't modern emergency passage. It was older, much older. Why does this exist? Thomas asked quietly. Harold exhaled shakily. The Queen told me once, this palace is bones. Some parts were built simply to be forgotten. This passage was for her private moments, and for one room that no one else was meant to enter. Where are we going? Thomas asked. Harold hesitated, not out of secrecy, but reverence. To the room she called her sanctuary. Thomas felt the weight of those words. A sanctuary, something beyond duty or politics, something deeply personal. And if the Queen had tied the missing necklace to her sanctuary, then whatever lay ahead wasn't a hiding place. It was a truth, the room that should not exist. After several minutes, the narrow staircase widened into a small landing. Harold lit a tiny match, holding it up to reveal a wooden door, ancient, with carvings weathered by time but still elegant. A crown, a rose, a single star. She came here often, Harold whispered, on nights when the world felt heavy. Thomas touched the carvings gently. They surprised him. Not cold, warm. Harold opened the door. Inside, the room glowed faintly with reflected moonlight. It wasn't grand or royal. It was humble, almost heartbreakingly so. A small writing table, a single velvet chair, a set of framed sketches done in charcoal, a tea set resting beside a book of prayers. This room was not meant for history books or cameras. It was meant for her. Thomas stepped in cautiously, feeling as though he were walking through someone's memories. He could almost imagine the Queen sitting at the table, hands folded, whispering thoughts she never voiced aloud. "Close the door," Harold murmured. Thomas did. The matchlight flickered, revealing something else. Another velvet display case resting quietly near the desk. Empty, but the shape inside the box matched the stolen necklace perfectly. Thomas's breath locked. "It was kept here," Harold whispered. "Not in the main collection. She moved it herself months ago." "Why?" Harold looked at the framed sketches. Thomas followed his gaze and froze. One sketch showed the Queen holding a young child, laughing. Another showed a man with sharp cheekbones and a familiar jawline. A third sketch depicted the Queen wearing the missing necklace at an informal garden picnic. "These weren't public moments," Harold said. "These were personal memories she never shared." Thomas felt something stir inside him. This wasn't about jewels. This was about legacy. But one question still burned. Why was the necklace taken before she died? Harold swallowed. Because she asked someone to take it. Thomas stared at him. She wanted it taken? Yes, but not stolen. Recovered. Harold walked to the desk and opened a small drawer. Inside lay a leather-bound journal. He handed it to Thomas, who felt the smooth cover, well-used, well-loved. "Read the first page." Thomas opened the journal. The Queen's handwriting flowed across the paper, steady and graceful. "This necklace was given to me by someone the public will never know. If it is ever taken from its place, it means the time has come to reveal the truth behind it. My truth." Thomas's chest tightened. Harold whispered. She was preparing for something, a revelation, a message she wanted released only when she was gone. Thomas turned the page. Then another, and his breath slowly left him. The entries were personal, deeply so, stories she never told anyone. Confessions of a friendship she protected, a person she trusted more than some of her own advisors, a promise she made decades ago, one involving the necklace. But the last entry made Thomas freeze entirely. If this mission passes to my guard, he will know. He is the one who sees the quiet things. Thomas nearly dropped the journal. Harold whispered, "She meant you." The ground shook like something ancient had woken under the soil. Dust fell from the cavern ceiling. The river boiled with heat. And in the middle of that trembling earth stood Una, soaked, bruised, breathing like fire lived inside her chest. Behind her, the predator cubs formed a shield around her legs. Tiny bodies pressed to her boots, eyes glowing with fierce loyalty. They didn't understand fear. They only understood her. And now the enemy returned. The dark corridor at the far end of the cavern cracked with purple sparks. Heavy steps, metal scraping stone, a roar that made the walls bend. The pack lords had arrived. 3 of them, giants, twice the size of the adult predator she fought earlier. Their armor looked like bone fused with iron. Their jaws carried old scars. Their breath smelled of war. They had come because a human had humiliated them, and humans in their culture were supposed to kneel. Una wiped blood from her cheek with the back of her hand. She didn't kneel. She stepped forward. One cub squeaked, grabbing her pant leg with tiny claws, begging her not to move. Una dropped the hand and brushed the little head. "Stay behind me," she whispered. They listened. Of course they listened. These cubs would follow her into fire. The pack lord stepped closer. The ground dipped under each footstep. One of them pointed a massive claw at her. A voice like cracked thunder filled the cavern. "Human, you broke our law. Return the cubs." Una felt the fear rise in her throat. But fear wasn't stronger than instinct, and her instinct now was protect. "They're children," she said, "not property." The pack lords growled at once, a terrifying, vibrating sound. Even the river rippled backward. Una straightened her back. "Come take them," she said. For the first time in recorded history, a human challenged a pack lord. Silence. Then everything exploded. The first lord charged, claws slicing sparks off the stone. Una dove aside, the shock wave rolling her across the ground. The cubs scattered, squeaking in panic. The second lord swung a bone blade the size of a tree trunk. It smashed into the cavern wall, sending chunks of rock flying like bullets. Una ran. She wasn't faster. She wasn't stronger. But humans had something else. Adaptation. She grabbed a fallen metal beam and used it like a lever to vault onto a stone ledge. The lord slashed again, missing her by inches. Dust clouded the air. Heat pulsed through the cavern. One cub screamed. Una spun. A lord had pinned the smallest cub under its massive claws. "No!" Una breathed. Then she jumped. Not with reason. Not with strategy. With the absolute fury of someone protecting a child. She slammed onto the lord's arm. Her hands found a gap between armor plates. She jammed her fingers in and ripped. The creature roared. She used the pain to climb higher, onto its back, her body fueled by pure adrenaline. The lord spun, slamming itself into the cavern wall to crush her. She rolled off, landed on the ground hard, but alive. She limped to her feet. The cubs gathered behind her again. Humans should have run. Humans should have begged. Humans should have died. Instead, a lone human woman kept standing. The pack lords finally understood. This was no ordinary creature. This was a human, and humans fought like legends. The third pack lord roared and unleashed a thermal pulse, a shock wave of burning air. Una shielded the cubs with her body, feeling her skin blister, her clothes scorching. Pain tore through her spine. She gritted her teeth, refusing to fall. Her arms shook, her knees buckled, but she stayed there between death and those who trusted her. The lords stared. They expected surrender. They got defiance. Una lifted her head, face burned, vision blurry. "You want a war?" she whispered. "Then pick on someone your size." And the cavern answered her. The ceiling cracked. Heat surged. The river erupted in steam. A tremor shuddered through the ground as something massive climbed from the water. The mother beast. The same predator who had tested Una earlier in the story. The one who had judged her. The one who had chosen to trust her with the cubs. Now she rose like a mountain of claws and fury. A roar exploded from her chest, so loud the pack lords froze. She stepped between Yuna and the attackers, towering over everyone. Yuna collapsed to her knees, coughing, but still holding the cubs close. The mother beast looked down at her. A silent agreement passed between them. You protected my children. Now I protect you. The pack lords lunged all at once. The mother beast met them in a storm of violence. Claws slashed, armor shattered, roars echoed like thunderstorms. The cavern shook under the weight of ancient rage. One lord tried to flank. Yuna picked up a stone spear and hurled at its eye. It screamed, giving the mother beast an opening to crush its skull with one strike. Another lord leaped onto the mother beast's back. Yuna ran. Despite her injuries, leaped, grabbed the creature's armored spine, and stabbed with a broken piece of metal until purple blood sprayed across her arms. The lord fell. Only one remained. It saw the mother beast limping. It saw Yuna bleeding. It saw the cubs huddled together. So it charged. Yuna stepped forward. She had no weapon left. No strength left. Just one final instinct. Stand. Protect. Fight. She opened her arms as the lord thundered toward her. The mother beast surged with the last of her strength, blocking the blow. She grabbed the lord's throat and slammed it into the stone until it stopped moving. Silence fell. Only the sound of dripping water remained. Yuna sank to the ground. The cubs surrounded her, climbing onto her lap, burying their faces in her chest. She held them with shaking arms. The mother beast stood over them all, guarding them like a queen. The cavern glowed with soft blue light from the breaking ceiling. Dust drifted like snow. Warm wind flowed through the cracks. Yuna finally let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. It was over. The pack lords were defeated. A human had done the impossible again. Hours later, when rescue teams broke into the cavern, they found something no history book had ever recorded. A human woman sitting with predator cubs sleeping in her lap, a massive alpha beast standing protectively behind her, and the bodies of 3 pack lords lying broken on the ground. One soldier whispered, "What are humans made of?" No one answered, because the universe already knew. Humans don't run. Humans don't break. Humans rise. Humans protect. Humans are legends. And today, one human woman proved it again.